Hey everyone. And here we go. Everything looks okay. And we are live on this Wednesday, January the 29th. Not the 30th. I don't know. I made a mistake. I put January 30th and then I rectified, but it didn't rectify on the link. So anyways, it doesn't matter. We're live. That's the important thing. So hey everybody, welcome aboard. Welcome aboard. So everything seems to be all right. So hey everybody, welcome aboard to the live shortwave show, Wednesday edition. Thursday in some parts of the world. Depends on where you're watching from. And it's nice to have everybody here, as usual. We are going to, of course, talk about radio. There's some questions, interesting questions that I'm sure a lot of people will find interesting to get an answer. It's not always It's not always easy to find an answer, or sometimes an easy to understand answer. So my name is Gilles. I'm located in Montreal, Quebec, Canada, northeast part of North America. And I am here to entertain and talk about radio. You know, like the stuff here in the back. Radio, yeah. Still exists. People still use them. Yep, absolutely. And of course, we are here twice a week on Wednesday and Friday. Wednesday is 4 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific, and that's 0 UTC. On Friday, we're at 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific. That's 20 hours Universal Time. And we're here to talk about shortwave radio, radio in general of all sorts, even VHF, UHF at times. We have a Facebook group because, when the live show's over, there's a beautiful chat room with beautiful people. But when the show's over, does the party continue? Absolutely. It continues on the Facebook group. It has the same name as the channel here, which is official SWL channel. And it is a great place for most people because, there's a lot of activity. People posting about whatever they are listening to, pictures of their own Radio Shack videos. And it's really, really cool because it lets us see what people are listening to. And it is also a way of kind of continuing the conversation of radio outside of the regular, live shows. And it's a lot of fun to have everybody share over there. Here's the link. Now there's a few questions to answer. I've actually deleted a couple of entries this week because you don't answer the radio questions. Well, I'm sorry, but you're not going to be accepted in the group. You got to answer at least the questions, and which are radio related. As for the rest, hey, we're having a lot of fun, and it's the same feel down here. Great people that just want to have fun and share with everybody, and it's really a lot of fun to have that group running. And so this is the Wednesday edition. And today, of course, we have questions. Let me just check the email. I haven't checked the email here. We have Elizabeth that says hello to everybody. And she says she's looking forward to tonight's show. And that she's really, really enjoying the friendship and the information that comes out of this show. So it's really nice to have you here, Elizabeth, in Regina, Saskatchewan, Canada. We have questions today, courtesy of Patrick. Patrick is in New Haven, Connecticut. And he has several questions. He says he started listening to the radio, to shortwave radio, because of me, which is a good thing. He's 38 years old, and he works as an engineer for a local company, designing machinery with all sorts of robotics, and it looks very, very fascinating as a job. So he actually purchased a Texan PL880. He's enjoying the listening. Unfortunately, there's too much noise where he lives, so he actually does little trips where he gets into his car and goes a little further away from the city, does a few hours of listening, and then goes back home. He says it's not ideal because he'd like to listen from home, but it's kind of complicated because of the noise level. And so he has a list of questions, things that he can't quite grasp the knowledge of all about, why it's like that and how come things happen. So we're going to go through his list of questions today, and I think it's going to be interesting. So welcome, Patrick in Connecticut. Nice to have you on board. Anybody that wants to say hello can actually just say hi. If you're not in the chat room, you simply say hi through the email that I'm posting right now. Official shortwave radio at gmail.com. And here we go. So you can say hi. If you're not in the chat, you can say hi through here. You know, sometimes it's fun because we know there's a lot more people just in the background, quiet, not saying a word, but listening or watching the show live. There's often a lot more viewers than there are people participating. That, and there's also the fact that there's a lot of views during the week. Also, a typical show like this has about 1,500 views after a week, which is not bad for a shortwave radio show. We babble along of radio and all sorts of things, but it's going to be fun. He's got some interesting questions in his list, and that is going to be interesting. And it's a mix not just of shortwave, but it's a mix of question actually of long wave, medium wave, shortwave, and a few of VHF, UHF range questions. So he's got some interesting stuff we'll talk about. Apart from that, of course, there's a beautiful chat room, like I said, with amazing people where you can ask questions and share your knowledge or learn if your knowledge is limited. We're here for that once again. So I've got today my drink of choice for today is a 7-Up vodka and cranberry juice. So cheers, everybody. So this is going to be my drink for tonight. And because I didn't feel like beer, I'll have beer Friday probably. So it's nice to have everybody here. Hope you'll enjoy the show today as usual. Okay, in the chat, Bobby Burgess. Nice to have you here. WA5107SWL. Morgan City, Louisiana, USA. Jane Dagger, been a long time. How are you? Hope you're well. Michael Anger, nice to have you here from Chicago. Pretty cool. Bobby, just ignore them. They have no life. What else do we have? Rufus Newt, nice to have you on board from the Laurentian Valley, Ontario, Canada. We have Jim Dagger says, I'm picturing Jill sitting in front of his computer, perusing stage makeup and sipping an adult beverage, listening to Radio Ethiopia. Oh, God. There's an interesting story with that because I remember when I used to listen to, in the good old days when there's a lot of African stations, a couple of them were kind of very funny in the way they were done. And I remember one night listening to Radio Nationale Tchadienne that I believe is still sometimes heard on the bands, but I haven't seen a report of Chad in a long time. And I remember them because they were on 4904.5, and which was a unique, weird frequency. And it would come in really well in the early 90s. I remember my typical evening of my young adult life when I was 21, 22 years old was I was working hard. I had a job where I was working from 7 a.m. and there's always some overtime. So it was like I would most of the time work from 7 a.m. to around 6 p.m., then go home, and I would be darn tired, and I would, of course, have to wake up at like 5:30 a.m. to go to work, which for me was a nightmare. And what I would do is they would sign on at 0430 UT, which is 11:30 p.m., and of course, I have to wake up at 5:30, so I would listen to about 30 minutes and then just shut the radio off because, I was tired and just wanted to. And sometimes I would listen a little more because what I would do, and my typical evening back then was part music, part shortwave. What I mean by part music is that I've always been a big fan of music. And what I would do is I would put my headphones on. When I would come home from work, I would eat, take a shower, put my headphones on, lie down on the couch. And I was so tired of my day that very often what happened is I would fall asleep for a couple of hours. So that would actually make me, give me enough energy to sometimes listen a little more, because since I had at least a couple of hours of sleep already, I could listen into more of the Radio Nationale Tchadienne. And I remember distinctly one evening, and I'm listening in, and they would take calls from local people there. And the people would say hi to their friends, to their family, and wish everybody a great day, because over there was the start of a new day. And I remember one guy calling and not believing that he could hear his voice on the radio. And it was so funny. It was like magical for him. It was like he was on the phone. He could hear his voice. I remember he would put he would put the volume up a little bit, and they would actually tell him, "Well, you got to turn down that volume because it's interfering. It's making feedback." And he would just not put it down because he was just amazed at the fact that he would hear his voice on national radio. And I remember having a good laugh at that. I was like, well, okay. Kind of funny, Here people aren't kind of amazed of being on the radio most of the time. They're scared but not amazed. Souvenirs. Of the Dawn. Once a Big Mac. Wow. I just had spaghetti carbonara that I made myself just before the show. You want me to send you some? Jane Dagger does the Shelley impersonation. Hey everybody, welcome to the Shortwave Radio live stream. Man. I have no script. I know sometimes I should, on some of the stuff that I do. Sometimes there's always, that guy with a comment from time to time telling me, well, you should have a script because you just ramble on. And I'm like, yeah, but that's my thing, no script. The only times I have scripts, it's not even a script, it's notes, is when I do reviews. Because as I use the devices, I will have ideas, or I will have things that I want to remember to talk about. So I will often have notes. And I'm thinking yesterday of the Reticus TR608. I hope some of you saw the famous video of my review and the amazing number of flaws that radio has. Oh, crazy. Shelly, nice to have you on board. And your jammies? That's perfect. Perfect. Jammies, coffee, show, and radio. I mean, what could be better than that for an evening, honestly? So, let's continue down the list. If I ramble on, I'll be like 3 hours behind. How long have I been behind the most? I've probably been behind sometimes on the chat like an hour almost. Oh, man. I am right now 15 minutes behind, I can tell you guys. Actually, somebody told me, mention the how many minutes you're behind regularly. It's nice to know. Scott Lambert, nice to have you here, Scott. Ryan, nice to have you on board. Joseph Igenbaum, nice to have you on board. Northern Dawn, good morning. Nice to have you here on Popcom from South Central Pennsylvania. Joe Brown, happy Wednesday from Southeast Michigan. Pretty cool. Jane Dagger, oh my God, Wednesday looks good on you. James Farley, nice to have you here, James. Brian Weidenheimer, nice to have you here from British Columbia, Canada. Mark Stevens, nice to have you here and is enjoying his Tex NPL 880. Oh yeah, I hope you're having fun with that. I can tell you that. Really, really cool. Always fun to have a new radio, honestly. Are all those radios plugged in? Most of them, yes. Not all of them. Most of them. Esteban, nice to have you on board. And it's midnight. Prasad, nice to have you here. Prasad from India. Always nice to have you on board. Always nice to see your posts also in the Facebook group with the all the station you're hearing out there in India. Always really, really cool. Bolin191, nice to have you here. Do you got a CB call sign? Out of what TOG group? Alpha Sierra is no longer on. I came to the CB scene when licenses were not required anymore. Or if they were, I was illegal for a year or two. Pretty much. And that's why they removed all the CB call signs and stuff. Because they noticed everybody would just talk and not take the time to have a license for CB, honestly. Northern Dawn, anyone know a good station for learning French? Radio France International. With their international French. Anything in French, I don't know. You want to learn French? Je peux te parler en français si tu veux. Oh, man. Cyberflyer 1, nice to have you on board. I believe Alpha Sierra is still in existence, Bolin 191. I saw something on the internet about that. So Cyberflyer 1, nice to have you here. Keegan, Northwest Arkansas, 38 Fahrenheit. Here it's a little cold. It's like, I can't see my thermometer, but I think, let's use a phone. It's minus 10 Celsius, so it's something like 20 Fahrenheit, not even 15 Fahrenheit. Alan Lafferty, nice to have you here, as usual. Pretty cool to have everybody here. And there's one thing that was interesting this week, by the way, because I was seeing I just got a email through the Glenn Hauser group talking about jamming, about Voice of Turkey, because you guys might have seen my post. I'm going to talk about that a little bit. Old Radio Man, nice to have you on board, my friend, from Northeast Tennessee. Bobby Burgess says, hey, Elizabeth. Keegan is receiving with his dad's ICOM IC 7300 transceiver. Cool. And his dad is W9JEF. Rob, nice to have you here, my friend. Says hello to Elizabeth in Phoenix, Arizona. Charlie, W8CFO. Nice to have you here from Columbus, Ohio. Pretty cool. Larry P, nice to have you here from Georgia. Keegan says hello to Elizabeth. Northern Dawn also. Pretty cool to have you here. Jane Dyer says, I'd hang the 50-foot copper wire I got for my PL660, but the wind is 50 miles per hour right now. Yeah, that's not the best conditions for a long wire antenna. Bye, Esteban. Have a good night. Radioactive, nice to have you here. Listening to Point Arrays HF Telex on 8415. Let me just check it out if I hear it here. Do I hear anything right now? Oh, yeah, I'm hearing it. It's actually a good signal. If you guys want to try to decode that, it's Navtex, or you can use FLDG, go into Navtex 8415 upper sideband. Because I'm hearing the signal right now. It's actually pretty good. And that will decode all sorts of weather information in Point Arrays, California. Pagemaster, nice to have you here. KC5VOY, WA5136SWL. He did receive his general, but failed the extra by one question. Well, you got the possibility to do it again. So at least you got your general. And you know, it's going to give you the energy to go in for the extra. Jane Dagger, whiskey and Coke. Cool. Don't get too drunk. Northern Dawn wants to investigate importing some Canadian ales. So, you know. Kevin Wood, nice to have you on board, my friend. DX he's pretty good, He's out the door. He's kind of finicky. I got 2 chairs, and he was sleeping on the other chair, and now suddenly he's like, no, I don't want that chair anymore. And actually, before the show, I got up, and he looked at my chair and said, nah, I don't want that chair. I don't like these chairs. I was like, okay. He's been meowing a lot in the past couple of days. I'm almost wondering if there's not something wrong, because he doesn't, he eats and seems to be okay, but he meows more. I'm wondering if the days that are starting to get longer, if it's not kind of activating Paul, but because it's like minus 20 outdoor, he doesn't go outside, so he's kind of bored. So I'm wondering, maybe he's just bored and wants me to, take care of him a little more. I've been taking care of him quite a lot, but maybe he wants me to really take care of him a lot more in the daytime. Tio, nice to have you on board. Happy New Year. It's cool to have you here. And I hope you are, well, my friend, and hugs. Here's a big hug. Gilberto Rivera, nice to have you here, Gilberto. Jeff King, nice to have you here from Jacksonville. WF7I Homebrew, nice to have you on board. And really nice to have you here. Enjoy the Icon performance rants. Well, I'm not alone. I've read a lot about it. Actually, after that, I got an email from Dave, which is, let me just give you the call. He's got a online blog and reviews a lot of radios, and let me just find it here because I need to give him his full call sign. So Dave, N9EWO, came back to me last week after my rant of the Icom ICR30, and he started, he reviewed it, but he focused more on the HF portion of it, and not that much on the VHF, UHF. Plus, he was telling me that he lives in kind of a rural area where there's signals are not as strong, so he can actually use it even on the on a discount that he's got outside. But he does agree that the Icom ICR30 is way overpriced for what it does, and that it's unfortunately one of the interesting ideas that he actually gave me is, maybe the price, one of the problems of the price is these digital modes need to be licensed. So you got to pay a license for each radio that you sell that has, anything that is not open source, so like NXDN and P25 and so on. And whatever is the license fee, well, that's creating the hike in price of the ICOM ICR30. And he also was ranting, and everybody rants about that one on the ICOM ICR30 is the lack of DMR, which is kind of popular. So if it's I use it every day. It's right here. I used it almost every day since I got it, and I've been kind of taming the beast. So now I understood that for the best performance on VHF, UHF, I have to put the attenuator at level 2. So there's 3 level on the attenuation. There's the RF gain, but there's also the attenuator. So when I put the attenuator at level 2, that's where I get the maximum amount of possible signal on VHF, UHF. It's somewhat making it better because I've been scanning and listening, but you know what? I decoded D-Star 3 nights in a row, and I'm having problems decoding D-Star because it flashes D-Star FM according to the manual and the instructions that I've seen. When that happens, it's because the signal is interfered with and it just can't decode. I don't know. It's sad to see that a radio like that is plagued with problems like that. Because honestly, I still like it. I mean, I use it and I listen and kind of like the stuff in it, but maybe they should have put less stuff in it and made it a little more quality and reception. Kevin J. Napalo talking about the ICOM ICR30. Nice to have you here from New Jersey. WS2H. What else do we have? Gilberto is interested in ICOM rants. Last week, so what? We are the 29th. So last week's show, the 22nd. I ranted about it last Wednesday. So exactly a week ago in the live show. William, KC9 TVN. Nice to have you on board from northern Wisconsin. Glenn Zeckman. Nice to have you on board from Tennessee. What else do we have? Fito RM, nice to have you on board from Chiluyacan, Mexico. Nice to have you here, my friend. Randy in Riverside, California, nice to have you here. Radioactive says, nothing wrong with rambling on. Oh, man. I kind of, sometimes do digress and babble a lot. From left to right, but what else do we have? Scott Lambert says the reckless TR608. It was a reckless buy. Oh man, that thing is just like, wow. It's a beautiful looking radio. That's all I can say. What do you like about the radio? Well, it's beautiful looking. It's pretty nice. Really cool. Looks beautiful. Anything else? No, just looks beautiful. It's like a beautiful person that is just the worst when you start talking to. It's just really bad. Oh, God. Fares Al-Mansour, nice to have you here. Where are you located? Let us know. When you join in, always tell us where you are from. Radio Week Signal Work, nice to have you here, my friend Pat, K7LNP, Salt Lake City, Utah. Thank you for the donation. I received it. I noticed I received it a little earlier today. Thank you for the donation, my friend. Mark Stevens, loving the PL880, first SSB receiver. Cool. Cool. Keegan has 5,000 WWV S-Line Plus. Cool Space, checking in from Ocean Springs, Mississippi. Nice to have you here. So, ASR. What's ASR? I'm sorry for my lack of understanding of what ASR is all about, Faris Al Mansour. Brian Weidenheimer, Radio 2P 6060 kHz Brazil booming in. Oh, really? What do I have on 6060? Oh, I've got the 6060. I do have 6060. But let me just check for sure. I just want to make sure this is not Radio Vanek Cuba, because I am getting a station on 6060. Sounds Spanish. Yeah, I'm sorry to break your fun, but that's Radio Havana, Cuba, and I'm actually recognizing the woman's voice. So if you're hearing a woman's voice right now, Brian, unfortunately, this is Radio Havana, Cuba. That station, Radio 2P Brazil, it's not listed, and I've not been listed for a while. So unless you got a Portuguese, because you're in Brazil station, so if you would hear Portuguese, I'm not saying you're not listening to that, but what I'm hearing here is Spanish. If it would be Brazil, it would be Portuguese, and what I'm hearing is Radio Havana, Cuba. Habanero stuffed olives, Jane Dagger. Okay. Joey D, listening to station that is operating on the long wire antenna, WSPOI AM in Geneva, Illinois. Cool. Rufus Newt Quiche, just about done. Cool. F4IDL, nice to have you on board, my friend. Toujours un plaisir. From France. Joseph's got the Navtex decoding now, 8415. Cool. Joseph Igenbaum says, I am cheating since I received from Half Moon Bay, California. Tony Sima, nice to have you here, Tony Sierna. It's 32 Fahrenheit down here in South Jersey, Philly area. You can always get too drunk, Jane Dagger. Brian Penny, nice to have you on board from Cape Cod, Massachusetts. Larry Stevens, nice to have you here. It says hello to Elizabeth. And he's in Newark, Ohio. Jared EX, nice to have you on board, my friend. Rodolfo65 from New York City, nice to have you here. Jim F from Rhode Island, nice to have you on board. Brent in Brockville, Ontario, Canada. Hello there, my friend. Nice to have everybody here. Always fun to have everybody here, honestly. Prasad says he's off an hour. We'll be back. No problem, my friend. We should be here in an hour. For sure. See you later. Dave Todd, nice to have you here. Dave from Niagara, Ontario. Gaëtan Bellil. Bonsoir de Sainte-Sophie. Toujours un plaisir. De Montréal. Nice to have you here, my friend. What else do we have? Gilberto says, I would like to hear your opinion on using a transceiver with HF versus a dedicated receiver. That's a good question, because we might have sometimes the impressions that a transceiver is better for some reason. Most transceivers and receivers. So let's compare the tabletops, okay? Because most transceivers, well, there's handhelds, but like let's talk like say an ICOM ICR 7300 transceiver, for example, you would use to listen to HF or shortwave. For the most part, most transceivers are as good as a dedicated receiver. And it's just that they have a part of it that is a transceiver to transmit a signal. But over years, a lot of receivers were designed from transceivers. For example, Kenwood. The Kenwood R5000 I owned was kind of designed on the Kenwood TS 450S, something like that, 440S. It was kind of the receiver side of the transceiver. So when you had the transceiver, you had kind of the Kenwood R5000 radio for the receive. ICOM also might have done some of that also. So when you would buy an ICOM, for example, the ICOM ICR 8600, probably as a part of its design, because it's a wideband radio, so it can't really be compared totally, but part of its design comes from probably some of the transceivers that it made, and it took some of the receivers that it has in these transceivers and used it as a dedicated receiver. For the most part, a transceiver, from what I see, from what I hear, is as good a performer at receiving than a dedicated receiver. So that means if you have a choice, you go to the store, you go somewhere, you have a choice, and the price is the same. You have the choice between a transceiver, a dedicated receiver. Well, if in your head, if you're not a ham radio operator yet, but you are thinking that being a ham radio operator could be something that is in your future, well, that means by the transceiver, you'll already be halfway there. You're already going to be just waiting for that license to transmit. But for the most part, from what I see, most transceiver are as good as dedicated receivers, but they have a transmitter attached to them, pretty much. And like all devices, like all companies, there are some bad transceivers out there that receive like they're deaf or they're no good, like there are bad receivers. That exists. But overall, you'll get as good of a reception on a transceiver. So if you got a transceiver for HF listening, you're good to go. Jay Lyle, nice to have you here from Southern Illinois. Rodrigo Galtar, nice to have you on board listening to the shortwaves in Brazil with his Texan PL600. I was actually listening to Radio Nacional do Amazonas on 6180 just before the show started. Humberto Molina, nice to have you on board from San Salvador, El Salvador, Central America. Nice to have you here, Humberto. Nice to have people all across the world, Central, South America, Europe, and, India. It's really a lot of fun. Joseph says also getting 6060 Spanish. Yeah, Radio Havana, Cuba. Radio Havana, Cuba. It's sometimes sad when we try to DX something and we're like, oh, maybe this is going to be... But then you actually, you're like, okay, no, it's not that, unfortunately. Brent, so from the post, Brent is asking, has anyone been able to get a Texan PL990 or H501? So they're not in production yet. That's one thing you got to know. The production of these units has not started yet. The latest news we've got comes from Anonco that is kind of tightly, knows more about Texan than probably anybody else. So the PL990 H501 had a limited run. They had a few hundred of them that were all for the Chinese market. And what's happening is that the Anonco has mentioned that the Texan PL990 and H501 are being kind of tweaked. They're being kind of upgraded a little bit because, like everything that you could do, when a company does a product, one of the first things that happens is that the first run of the product might have bugs, and they test these things. But what happens is that they might not have tested enough on their own. And when it gets to the real market, so there are a few hundred radios out there, well, some people might have complained of some flaws or problems that they encountered. So that means that they know about certain things. So they're supposed to do some small upgrades in it. Maybe just firmware. I don't know. Maybe they could be kind of doing a little more electronics, enhancing a little more the electronics. So the official production of the radios has not yet started for the international market. So if anybody gets his hand on one of those, he got it directly from China or around China. Talking of China, because I've got at least a dozen messages this week of people asking me, with the coronavirus going on, should I be scared of ordering any radios from China and so on? And actually it's interesting because one of the first times that somebody asked me that question, I was listening to there was a specialist from the World Health Organization talking about it. And they talked about that because everything comes from China today. So a lot of people thought, well, is it dangerous to receive packages from China? So the doctor said that on a device, like a radio, for example, the virus loses its capability of infection very rapidly. So by the time that it goes from China, even if the radio you had was manipulated by somebody that had that virus, so by the time it's in the box, it's in the shipping and gets to your place, the virus is dead, or at least from what he says, incapable of of you infecting you at all. And that so he was kind of saying there's really no danger on that side of things. If somebody comes in the box with the radio, that's another story. And if somebody comes in the box with the radio, I don't know, but it's kind of a little shady. Dave Freeman, nice to have you here from Monroe, New York. Keegan has WWV, WWVH Hawaii, and Brazil on 10 megahertz. Wow. A trio of time stations. Let's see what I hear on 10 megahertz here. On 10... I've got nothing at all here. Nothing at all. And there's I'm hearing Spain, 9690, Radio Exterior de España. In Spanish, not very strong, but it's there. Jane Dagger, I'm now in a valley surrounded by elevated rock. Stupid question, one for the day. Can this be debilitating for my shortwave reception? So, if you are not immediately... So what can actually block a signal for shortwave, honestly? If you live next... So if you're in the valley, meaning, say that you're in the Grand Canyon, and that canyon, where you are, the canyon is, I don't know, a kilometer wide, and you're way down the canyon. Because you're blocked by all sides by the earth, that would block shortwave signals. If so, here in Montreal, to give you guys an idea, we are in a valley. Montreal is actually in a low part, and it's elevated on each side, the South Shore and the North Shore. So Montreal is really a valley. It's what we call the St. Lawrence Valley. And so I am in a valley, but because it's smooth, I mean, the valley it's just so big that you see, like, there's nothing really that you could see that blocks a signal around you. There's no signals in the valley should be as strong as signals in an elevated area for shortwave. Why? Because shortwave signals come from the sky. They are skywave. So they fall down from the ionosphere. So they're not really blocked unless you really are in a hole, basically. And the only place where a reception of a signal might be a problem in a valley would be on VHF, UHF for faraway signals. It's not impossible that because you're in a valley that some signals don't make it. But apart from that, for shortwave in general, it's not a problem. If you live near a mountain, very, very close to a mountain. So my one observation I had when I was younger, my sister was a ham radio operator. She would live very, very, very close to Mont Rougemont. And I mean really close. You would go outside her house, and in the back, in her backyard, at the end of the backyard, there was a trail going up the mountain. So the mountain was like there. Well, signals that came from that direction were blocked because she was so close to the mountain that most skywave at the angle they were falling were actually blocked by the mountain. And she was actually telling me that it actually made for some regions more difficult reception because the signals were blocked by the mountain behind the house. Yeah, Keegan, exactly. The Brazil station beeps, and so it's easy to know that it's Brazil. John W., nice to have you here from East Tennessee. Gaetan Belil says, new and listening to the airwaves, lots to learn. Est-ce que t'as une radio? What radio do you use, or you're just waiting to buy a radio or something? What are you using, Gaetan? Shelly. Let me just, go down here for a moment. I lost my spot. I hate it when that happens. Okay, Shelly says, does that Morse code signal still transmit at what used to be 8 p.m. before daylight savings? Do you remember the frequency? Yeah, it was 66, was it 4477? Or 6677? Oh man, I'm trying to remember now. But it does apparently, because the last time, I got to remember that frequency. The last time I checked was maybe 3 weeks to a month ago, and it was there. It was weak, but it was there. I could hear it. Kenwood TS5770 has a nice receiver. Pretty cool. Steve in Australia, nice to have you on board, trying to avoid the 40 degrees Celsius heat. We should try to send you a little bit of the cold here. It's minus 10 Celsius here. Tony Turtle, nice to have you on board from the Great Lakes of Michigan. Brian, my disappointment is immeasurable. Yeah, you know, we all have that moment, Brian, when it's like, oh, this could be... And then you're like, oh, that's Radio Havana, Cuba. Darn. Gilberto says, appreciate your response. Posted this question on the Facebook group as well. In particular, a direct compare between the ICOM R8600 and the Yaesu FT991A. You know, most decent transceivers have a great receiver. And honestly, when you have a transceiver, unless you notice that your transceiver is crappy in reception, For the most part, you've got a great radio and you don't need anything else, honestly. Keegan has CHU with some noise on 3330. Alberto is K4HPD. Cool. Cool. James Farley, can you do a compare between the Texan AM loop and the 48X on AM band? Yeah, I will. I know a lot of people want me to test out the passive loop and the 48X, which is going to be actually interesting, honestly, because that will actually give us an idea of, is the amplifier and the 48X actually doing a job? And because the AN200, which is a passive loop, which you guys can see here in the back, if the signal is as good with that, that means that the 48X might not be that great. Actually, it might just be working and that's it. But I will, James, I will post videos of comparing both loops. Absolutely. Kevin Wood is not hearing anything on 10 megahertz except Brazil. You're lucky. I'm not even hearing Brazil here. Jay Lyle never buys a first generation of radios. I give it about a year. Gives them time to work out the bugs. Example, Grundig Satellite 800. Yeah, it's like almost anything. Even computers. I often say, well, it's kind of cool that new computer and that new device looks really hot, but honestly, be careful because you can actually have the surprise of getting a really bad radio, unfortunately, which is kind of sad. Let me just check out here a little bit more of stuff. See if anybody has joined in via email. So nobody has actually said hello or anything. So, okay. Rufus Newt bought a 6-pack of Corona. Phoning in sick tomorrow. You got the coronavirus. Jane Dagger says, I get lots from China, no problems. Plus paper and metal, not helpful for organic life. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Keegan has WRMI 5850. Joseph, if someone comes in the box with a radio, you probably have much bigger problems anyway. Yeah, that's what I'm going to say. Unless it's one of those inflatable friends. Hunter Carver, nice to have you here, my friend. Ronald Zucala, nice to have you here. He owns the Alinco DJ X11T handheld, and I'm much disappointed with the big price versus how it operates. So don't feel bad about the ICOM 30. A big help was the Diamond SRH 789 antenna. The thing is that let's be fair, okay? Because that's something I already know. I mean, I've got the R30 there. The R20 is his little cousin here. So these two are wideband receivers. And let's be fair in one way. A really good full radio, because we're not because we got to take the SDRs and put them in a category that's apart. Because, for example, somebody told me this week, well, I don't understand, the RSPDX does so well on VHF UHF for $200. Why can't these radios do the same? You can't compare. Because remember one thing, the RSPDX is $200, but the computer that's running it is, in my case, $1,000 computer. It's actually a $1,200 radio in reality. Okay? So you got to be fair. Plus, the fact that, so it has a display, it has keypads, it has all the gear, mechanical gear, and electronics gear for it to be autonomous. All that adds to the price of a device. So to be fair, I paid... So, price compare, just to give you guys an idea. I paid, so the R20 is here. I paid, let's take it out. Let's take both out. There we go. So, to be fair, I paid on sale this R20 about, I don't know, 8 years ago, 7 or 8 years ago. I paid 500 with taxes and everything, 575 for the R20. That said, this one, which is the R30, is from the same store actually, Radio World in Toronto, Canada, 900 Canadian dollars. So with taxes, so I said I paid 575 for the R20. I would have paid on this one $1,000, $1,030. So $1,000. This is $1,000. This is 575. This is half the price of this thing, roughly. Now, this doesn't do half of what this does. The R20 is a wideband receiver, all mode, has dual VFO, so you can listen to two frequencies at the same time. So I can do this and listen to two frequencies actually at the same time. It does have a recorder. It does have a lot of interesting features. It goes to 3 gigahertz. But that's it. It doesn't decode any digital modes or anything. This, okay, let's be fair. It doubled the price. So, let's take inflation. Let's take the increase in price, how much money we would now have, I believe when the R20 was the last run of R20 that existed, were like almost $750. So that means that this radio to be the same thing would probably be like $800 today. Problem is, it isn't the same thing. The all mode and the frequency range and dual VFOs are the pretty much the only thing that are the same. Because this has a lot more. So you could see at the bottom there's a GPS giving me my position, height, and all of that, speed of movement. It also decodes some digital modes. So it has D-Star, it has P25 Phase 1, it has NXDN, it has the Japanese thing. I'm trying to remember the name. So it actually does way more. It has actually a menu in here that is more complex. Even though the menu on the R20 is very complex, the menu here is more complex than the R20. So what happens is that these two radios are not really the same. You can't compare that much. And because this decodes digital modes like D-Star and so on, there's a lot more electronics and computerized electronics in it. So it pushes the price up. And to be fair, a small package like this that does so much, to be very, very good in performance, would probably be much more expensive. So, look at the ICOM ICR 8600. Remove the fact that it's a big radio that it's kind of an SDR. To perform like it performs, it costs 3,000 Canadian dollars. It is 3 times the price of this. And it decodes D-Star and stuff like that. Of course, it does perform well. It's 3 times the price. The electronics is there to make the receiver really good. So to be fair, maybe they packed a little too much stuff in this for the price that you pay. So what happens? Well, you got to cut somewhere. If you add something, nobody's going to buy a $3,000 ICOM SCR30. Let's be fair. If you have the choice between an ICOM SCR30 at $3,000 or an ICOM R8600, you're getting the 8600. You're getting that big radio. You're not getting the R30. Because you'll say, well, I'm not going to go around with a small $3,000 handheld. Are you crazy? It's not worth that. That's pretty much what a lot of people will say in their minds. So what happens is that they cut in different places. The engineers that designed this thing, they said, well, we could do this and do that, and maybe we could remove that part, or this is how we're going to design the receiver part, or this and that. And result, well, it's a mixed bag. It's a mixed bag because they opted for the maximum amount of features versus the maximum amount of the minimum amount of price. So that's where the problem lies, is that it's expensive, but honestly, for what it does, it probably would need to be more expensive to be really good. Plus the fact that this is a miniature radio. When you actually make electronics smaller, like in there, because I mean, the ICOM ICR8600 is a big chunk of radio. It has a lot of space in it to put electronics. You don't have to put it as small. That is very, very miniature. It's very small electronics. So there's a lot of stuff that, you got to be fair. I'm not expecting a wideband radio like that to perform that well. Honestly, I took out my Pro 43, my Realistic Pro 43, which is a regular scanner, and started scanning, and was scanning the same frequency range as the ICOM ICR30. I mean, my Pro 43 was able to get some signals and stop on some signals sometimes that the R30 actually just passed without even noticing it was there. But I paid $400 for a regular scanner that is just a handheld scanner with just basic functionalities. So you can guess that for $400, the electronics in there for reception, the radio itself, is probably of better quality because it has no other extra around it that also costs money to implement inside the radio. So it's a very complex thing, and also, to be fair, most of the wideband portable receivers that I've seen are not good performers. I've heard a lot about different handhelds and wideband handhelds that were, good, but it's difficult because I'd like to see what good is. A great example is that I forgot what I was talking about because I just got distracted by the chat room. Man. So anyways, we're talking about the radio, the performance, and so on. But anyways, performance. My performance, and knowing what the performance is, because it's very, very unique. When somebody tells me a radio is really amazing, and I get it, and I test it, and what I find is that, well, it's not really good. The environment where you are, I think, is very important. What is it? It's Jerry DX that has an R30, I think, or Radioactive. I'm trying to remember who has the R30, but I mean, he tells me it's amazing here, but you're not in the same environment that I am. Dave, that sent me the email, also told me the same thing. He says, I live in a rural area. It works quite well from what I've seen. Yeah, but smack in the middle of Montreal with all these strong signals everywhere, it degrades really fast. And that's where the problem lies. These wideband receivers, I always say to anybody, if you're going to spend $1,000 on an R30, you know what? Buy yourself a dedicated shortwave and a Whistler TRX1 for the digital decoding side of things separately, It's going to cost you $1,000, but you'll get a really good shortwave radio and a good performing VHF UHF receiver at the same time. No problem, Brent. Gaetan says also the device would have built this month or in December. Yeah. Well, sometimes it could be, like put in the box or something, but, Okay, let's go down here. Radioactive is hearing about WWVH, WWV on 10 megahertz in Oregon. Cool. What else do we have? Radioactive. Well, signals are falling down from the ionosphere. Oh, man. Roughest Newt is in a narrow valley. Shortwave DX is great. Little noise. VHF, UHF, very little of anything. Yeah, 4477, eh, Shelly? I think it was 4477. There's something on... I need to check it out here. What's the frequency here? This is... There's some people talking on 465... Oh, isn't that one of the arrow frequencies? 4651, I think. Gaetan Belil, for now, a small Texan R9012 and SDR Uno with RSP1A. Oh, cool. C'est un bon setup. Really nice. KC9KUH. You all think it's worth upgrading to the new RSPDX? I have the RSP2 Pro. So, honestly, KC9KUH, I don't know the performance of the RSP 2 Pro. But if it's like the performance more of my RSP1A, okay? And if your main listening is shortwave and VHF UHF, I'm not sure upgrading is necessarily a good thing. Because I can't, on the range of, above 3 megahertz, let's put it above 3 megahertz, the performance of the RSPDX is equal. It's not worse. It's not, I can't seem to see it really better. So the RSP1A, the RSP2 Pro, if it performs the same, are probably okay. Where I read, I've had comments, and where I need to actually test out still is apparently below 2 megahertz, it's a killer device. If you are DXing long wave or medium wave, that's where the RSPDX really shines. And that's where you should get one. So it all depends what you do, honestly. Keegan, sounds like a jammer. 5295 and 7335 sounding exactly the same. 5295. Oh, you mean that chirp sound? It's like a chirping sound? That's what you got here. 7335. Let me try it out here. Let's see if I hear it there too. But I just heard kind of a chirping, fast chirping sound. 5295, which is not a jammer. It's a over-the-horizon radar from, I believe it comes from Russia. Dave Freeman, just saw a video you did at your official scanner channel. I bought a realistic Hyperscan 400 channel Pro 2006. Appreciated the review. Do you do live shows on that channel too? I used to, but right now I'm not doing any. But I plan on eventually starting a live show again on that channel. I'll see what I can do. The Pro 2006 is a nice scanner. If you have scan a lot, scan really a lot. There's still a lot of analog stuff in a VHF UHF range to listen to. But Pro 2006 is one of those really good realistic desktop. I got one over there with the clock just on top of it. Hunter Carver received good signals over the mountains in North Carolina from Nashville, Tennessee. I'm all the way out on Cape Fear River. Gaetan Belil, regarding purchases, do you not recommend Baofeng type devices at all? It's a mixed bag. Baofeng are very, very cheap. And from what I have, 'cause I don't own one, maybe I should buy one just to test it. But I've seen a lot of people kind of mention, well, you get what you pay for, and meaning that, you know, they work, they do a job, but they're not necessarily the best. Maybe I should get one. By the way, I am 11 minutes behind in the chat room. David Martin, nice to have you here, my friend. David Provo, nice to have you on board from Sarasota. Cool Space, nice to have you here. Have a PL660, RadioWow, and XH Data. Getting the PL990 if it turns out to be a good one. There are a lot of people have been asking me if I will buy one to test, and so I do plan on getting one if when they are eventually ready. Dave Todd, Radio Shack scanners made by GRE. Yeah, GRE out of Taiwan was the one making most of those devices. Absolutely, some of them are really, really good. Pro 43, I had so much fun with the Pro 43 over years back then. Zachary Antle, nice to have you on board. Nah, not really. I'm not really nervous, honestly. I'd be nervous of the coronavirus more if you know, it could be worse. Let's say, you know. I'd be more nervous if somebody said there's Ebola virus all across, you know, North America. That would be more scary than the coronavirus right now, actually. I think if we just got to be aware and you know, and see. What else do we have? Dave Bilal, WA1UJA. Nick Mayakovsky, nice to have you on board. I'm not going to stop buying anything from China, Nick. It's not, I'm not scared of that. David Martin says, I'm reluctant to pay for devices with built-in digital modes. Will D-Star be around in 10 years? Will the protocol in the future be the same? So D-Star is really, really ICOM. ICOM is pushing D-Star. From what I've seen, it's one of the most popular AM modes because there's a lot of people with ICOM receivers. But honestly, it would be much, much more interesting if there would be just open standard digital modes that aren't, they're license free and that could be easily implemented and upgraded in different radios. So David Martin says, will the digital modes of a 10-year-old radio still work? We'll be using the same. You know, absolutely, these are a valid question. You know, nothing tells you that, for example, ICOM might come out in 3 years and say, hey, we got D-Star 2, the better improved protocol that isn't compatible with D-Star, you know. Kimberly in California, nice to have you here. K6YYL. Mickey Delmage, nice to have you here in from Alberta, Canada. Having fun digitizing some audio clips for this year's Winterfest trivia contest. Wow, cool. Cool. Sad I can't go. I would have enjoyed going. James Farley loves the PL880 except for the poor AGC on SSB. That you know, if there would be a rant for a lot of text and receivers is the AGC problem of SSB. Unfortunately, you're right on that. Dave taught young lady in French on 2749. Let's see if I can hear anything here. Yep, hearing the young lady. Pretty good signal actually here. 2749. Linux DOS. Nice to have you here from nice to have you here. So this is, yep, 2749 is Halifax, Nova Scotia. Actually, there's several places. It could be Halifax. It could be... So Kimberly, K6YYL, says, have several Baofangs. My brother left me after he passed. I would not recommend them at all for anyone beginning. They are frustratingly difficult to program. So, kind of interesting. Tony Turtle, listening to some signals on 1918 160 meters. Rifleman 336, nice to have you on board. N8 UCN, pretty cool. Casper Peterson, nice to have you here, my friend. Pretty cool. Kimberly says, if anyone wants a good starting handy talkie, a Yaesu FT60R is an excellent choice. Paid a little extra money for them. They are not usually expensive at all. And great one, tried and true. Cool. Rufus Noon has decent copy of 2749. Pretty good. Gaetan Bilal was thinking of purchase, of course, because of the price, but I want to be able to use it. So I think, Gaetan, you got a great bunch here that is kind of helping you make a choice of a good one. Of a really good one. Kevin Wood says, 2749 is next door neighbor. Dan V, nice to have you on board, Dan, from Northeast Ohio, and 8WJZ, pretty cool. Whistler TRX1, don't know. It depends what's happening. I can't answer the question. I don't know. You would need to have somebody listening in Europe to see if it has all of these modes. I don't know, Casper. No, this one is from... let me just check here for a second. 2749 is... I think it's the one here in Quebec. Rivière au Renard, something like that. Les Escoumins. Let me just check it out here. Yeah. This one is... okay, let me see here. We're at 01. It's kind of mixed up here because there's a lot of the schedules don't seem to fit. But I think this one, there's on 2749, it could be the one from Les Escoumins, which is in the eastern part of the province of Quebec. And it would explain why I believe it's only in French at this time. So that would explain why it's also only in French, pretty much. I think it's one from the eastern part of Quebec. Linux DOS, yeah, D-Star. It's true. It's Kenwood too. It's a joint venture. ICOM Kenwood stuff. Yaesu is Fusion, absolutely. Then there's DMR. A lot of commercial stuff is the DMR, and that is why it's a little sad also on the ICOM ICR30, because DMR is so popular. They should have had a DMR to the radio. Maybe that would have made me a little happier if DMR would have been part of the R30. Ryan says the buzzer is strong on 4625. Let's check it out. 4625. Oh, it's pretty good. Absolutely. The Russian buzzer near St. Petersburg, Russia. 4625 kilohertz is I'm hearing it quite well actually here. Absolutely. Pretty cool. So hey guys, we've been on for an hour 20. We have some questions from Patrick that we'll be answering, and we'll be checking that out. So Patrick is in Connecticut, and Matambali, nice to have you here. I just got your email. Matambali says, took 3 ham license tests on the same day and passed, getting 2 questions wrong out of 140. And the verification there was, we're sure that I was a FCC auditor. Man. One of the verifications were addressed to the exams. All three were male and chatted loudly through all the tests. I had a novice license back when I was 14, and I am an electrical engineer, so the electrical RF parts weren't difficult. It took a fair amount of study for the regulations part. Safety questions were the most common. Yeah, honestly, the times that I've actually went to pass, because you can here go online and pass the tests online, and every time that I pass a test, the most difficult questions, honestly, that I have are the ones on regulations of the ham stuff. Because for electronics and all of that, I studied electronics. I know computers and stuff, so there's a lot of that is not a problem, actually. Fast load, nice to have you here. Kevin Wood, the buzzer, pretty clear in Nova Scotia. Gustavo Pinto, so all receivers should take localization conditions into consideration. Not all. Okay, let's okay. Interesting question again. So here's the thing. Yes and no. Yes, because if you live in the country where there's not a lot of stuff around you, and if you live in a big city, receivers will not behave the same. So for that, yes. I mean, you've got to be able to do a test of a radio and understand, depending on the conditions, where I was going to be. So one of my comments I had quite often on the R30 is, well, if you live in the middle of a forest, it's probably going to be fine because it's not going to be overloaded by anything. But if you live like me in a city, it is overloaded and it is difficult to use correctly. On a shortwave radio, you could say the same. A portable shortwave radio in the middle of Montreal and in the middle of a countryside house that your next door neighbor is 2 miles away. The noise level is not going to be the same. And if you live, here in Montreal, what I have as the main problem in most portable radios, because we've got some strong FM stations, where I live here, I have the impression that I'm bombarded by FM stations. So a portable radio needs to be really good to go through the test here, honestly. So if I test a radio and I tell you it's darn good, I mean, it's going to be darn good everywhere because here is a tough environment where I'm testing already. But a radio like I have that is overloaded easily, so if I have one of the portables that I would use and it's overloaded by the FM station breakthrough, I have seen some reviews of some of my own radios that I've kind of put in the not really good mode. In my review, I said it wasn't really that great. And the review of that person was, well, no, it's really a good radio. But that's the thing is, okay, that person lives in the middle of, in a small town. There's not a lot of strong signals around. So the receiver doesn't have the same problems that I actually have. Is that FM breakthrough problem. So there is a localization condition into consideration. That's why real receiver reviews, the ones from, like Passport to Broadband Radio, we used to do that. The big gun radios, they would actually go in a lab and they would submit the radio to strict tests that are done in a laboratory with specific strength signals and specific ways of testing it, that you can actually compare each radio and know which ones could be crappy or not in certain situations or not. But for sure, localization is a factor to consider. So, I've got a few people will tell me the R30 is amazing. I got a few people that also tell me the R30 is crappy. So, we're not all living in the same environment. For sure. For sure. Pagemaster barely hears the buzzer in Moore, Oklahoma. Dave Freeman. On the Pro 2006 scanner, it mentions it has AM FM. Do they mean it also supports broadcast AM FM? Not broadcast AM, because it doesn't go down for that. AM FM are modes. So you got to remember that any radio that has AM FM, we got to take our mind off of a regular, like a boombox radio, where for most of us, AM, FM are two bands of radio. The FM band where we listen to our music and stuff, and the AM band where we listen to radio stations also. On a radio like the Pro 2006, it's AM, FM means modes. The Pro 2006 as AM, FM, FM wide. It has 3 modes actually. So, FM wide on the Pro 2006 scanner, you can actually listen to FM broadcasts. So if you punch in your local FM station you listen all the time and put it in wide FM mode, you will be listening to your station. It's going to be coming in clear. Actually, I did that a few times on my Pro 2006. AM mode in the Pro 2006 will mostly be used in 2 spots. So it has AM because, first of all, if you scan the airband is always in AM. So 108 to 136 megahertz is always in AM mode because aircrafts in airports communicate in AM mode. The other place you'll use AM on the Pro 2006 is on the 225 to 400 megahertz range, because over there you've got the military band. You also have a kind of an air band also. So that also uses AM mode. So military aircrafts in the 200, 300 megahertz range use AM mode. So that's modes for the different places you listen to. The majority of what you'll listen to on the Pro 2006 is FM, because almost anything you'll listen to is FM narrow. But you'll have FM wide for the broadcast band on FM, 88, 108. And you have AM for the air band for the military air band. And also, since it starts at 25 megahertz, 25 to 30 megahertz, the 10 meter band is in there, and CB band is in there. You use AM mode for those transmissions also. Hal Mesa, nice to have you here. It says those are those questions even down here in the States. Dave doesn't hear the buzzer in Niagara. Oh, sad. 4245245. Yeah, if it's the chirping, Keegan, it's probably a radar. Yep, it's only in mono in the broadcast band, absolutely. Rufus Newt has no buzzer. Brian says, I'm hoping to write in March. I'm getting 90% on most of my practice tests. Very excited to get licensed. Cool. And congratulations. So, what else do we have? Follow me, Sam. Didn't they block out the analog cell phone frequencies on the 2006? Yep, but it's easy. It's a little diode that you clip on the front panel. Mine has that. I remember clipping the diode. Kevin Wood is 5450. Yeah, pretty good also. That's the Royal Air Force vomit from the UK. Linus Doss, you ever tried a C-crane antenna that is supposed to stabilize AM signals, less fading, and all of that? Getting pretty good reviews on some circles. I've never tested the C-crane antenna at all. I didn't even know there was a C-crane antenna. So I have a hard time with anything that stabilizes fading, because fading is something that is in the signal itself as the ionosphere changes. And I'm careful with these tests that people are getting good reviews, because I've seen one review of my Texan AN48X. The guy just swears that this is the best antenna he's ever had, as good as the MLA30. Yeah, no, it's not. So, unless I don't want to be pretend that I know more or anything, but I'm going to tell you one thing. I'm going to tell you one thing. Unless I tested myself, I've got a hard time. I've got a really hard time believing a lot of the reviews out there of certain things that I see. I can tell you that. What else do we have? Dave Freeman. So, yep, you can listen to FM broadcasts. Absolutely. You just put it in wide FM mode, and it's going to work. Kevin Wood, over the horizon radar blasting on 5765. Yeah, I see it all. When I put my, I just put my SDR on 5450 for your signal, Kevin, and I could see it bouncing all around 5 megahertz. So right now it's on around 5230. Right now. 5230, 5215. Now so it just went. If I look at the next, and now it's going to have, it's going to bounce off to another spot. So right now I'm seeing between 5 and 6 megahertz. And as I'm doing this, I see it bounce different frequencies. So it's now on 5160. It's also on 5325. So it was the two spots at the same time. It's back on 5162. So it's really bouncing at different spots in the 5 megahertz area. So this is really a radar, an over-the-horizon radar. Page mode. Page Master says, for those of you here, think of modes as a form of transportation for the intelligence signals. For example, your vehicle is a mode of transportation. The problem with AM FM, and that probably a lot of people are baffled by AM FM, because when we grew up, they gave us a radio and it said AM FM. In reality, they should have given us a radio that says medium wave VHF, because the AM band is medium wave and the FM band is in the VHF range. And we would have known that these are frequency ranges. Now they decided, well, that's AM, that's FM. And they used the transmission mode. So the difference between both is that amplitude modulation and frequency modulation is different. So on AM, you get a carrier, and it's the strength of what's in that carrier, the voice, that is actually making a difference and making that receiver actually get the signal and give you what you're listening to. It also makes the receiver more simple, because it's that amplitude or that difference in the carrier that makes the radio give out whatever you're listening to. In an FM signal, it's a frequency modulation. When somebody talks or if there's music, the frequency shifts. It's not the amplitude, it's the frequency that shifts. And so basically you need a little more complex way of reception in FM than in AM. The bands were amazing yesterday, and they're looking. I'm just gonna look at 49 meter band right now. Last night, 49 meter band was amazing. I didn't want to go to bed because they were so amazing. Looks pretty good tonight too. And by the way, because somebody was asking me the other day, so that jammer on Voice of Turkey. So if you guys are in the Facebook group, I actually post. I should have posted. Yeah, but I posted a video also, and I said, "Hey, is Voice of Turkey being jammed?" And actually, it's jammed, but not intentionally. So what I understood last night is I wanted to listen to Voice of Turkey at 04 UT on 6125, and the signal was actually good. But I tuned in 5 minutes early and noticed a super powerful Radio Marti from the US. So Radio Marti is that propaganda signal from the US to Cuba. And Cuba has a jammer on the frequencies of Radio Marti. So what I understood is that when Radio Marti leaves the air at 0400, Cuba does not turn off its jammer. So it continues to work. And depending on the propagation conditions, actually interferes with the Voice of Turkey signal on 6125. So when I was listening in, sorry guys, when I was listening in the other day, it was actually the Cuban jammer that was still on. Ryan, nope, still no China Radio International from the Albania relays. It's been a while, absolutely. I'm starting to wonder if they're going to come back. Are they kind of rethinking their plans? The only CRI... So, you know, and I'll rant a little bit at something here. Because over the last year or two, I don't know how many people ranted at, well, the only thing I hear is China Radio International. And I would like to almost say right now is like, are you happy it's gone? I'm not sure. You're probably now thinking, well, okay, at least there was China Radio International. And what I mean by that is, instead of ranting, it's all you listen to or hear, you should rant differently, because it's like ranting at Brother Stare. I hate Brother Stare. I don't listen to Brother Stare. You know, that guy needs to go to jail for what he did. But, like I always say, it's like there's money going into these stations. Maybe it's maintaining these stations on the air because of all the money going in. And when somebody says, well, all I hear is Brother Stare, well, the thing that I'll say is, well, there's a button that you can use to change frequency. Stop ranting at I hear only Brother Stare, or stop ranting at I only hear China Radio, and check other frequencies and see what's there. Because it's a wrong rant. It's a rant that's not well placed. So you could say the same. Oh, well, you happy now? China Radio's not there? No, maybe you're saying, well, you know what? At least there was China Radio. Just to say, you know. So, I don't know. China Radio is not back. I know that they seem to have left the airwaves really in that time. You know, they left at that time when there was that earthquake. I don't know, you know. It's kind of a long time before they're coming back. What's happening? You know? I don't know. Dave Freeman ordered the BNC SLR antenna for the Pro 2006 scanner. Is this antenna good to use in the country? I don't know a lot about that antenna, but any good antenna is a good antenna, so I don't know about that one in particular. What's nice about the Pro 2006 is that it's pretty good with good antennas, even in cities, so it's not too bad. Gilberto Rivera says 5450 volume received in Central Florida. 2 week, lots of QRM. It's a female voice though. Yep, female. Gaetan Bilal, do I understand that realistic Pro 2006 is only used for shortwave and FM stations? No. The Pro 2006 is a scanner radio. It is a 25 megahertz all the way up to 1300 megahertz scanner radio. So it has AM and FM modes. Now, if you look at a standard scanner radio, any portable scanner radio, the main mode in most scanner radios, because the Pro 2006 gives you these modes because you can switch the modes. In a regular scanner radio, you cannot switch modes. A basic scanner radio, the radio switches the mode for you when you're in the proper band. So an example, buy a, I'll get one here. If I take but this is really basic here. So here's a really basic one. Oops. I just bumped the, so here we got a very basic Uniden scanner. Okay. So this is a 30 megahertz, no, 29 megahertz, all the way up to 12 megahertz VHF UHF scanner. So think of the Pro 2006 as being in the same league as this little portable here. It's better quality, but it's the same thing. It's a scanner radio. This does not have an AM FM button on it. Why? Because when you are on VHF UHF, 90% of what you're listening to is FM. It's FM narrow. The only part of the range that has a different mode is the airband, listening to airplanes, listening to the airports around us. That's AM mode. It's a mode. AM and FM are modes of transmissions. So in our most scanners, it's automatically switched for you. You got nothing to do. A more advanced radio often gives you a choice, and that's where the Pro 2006 is different. It's a scanner radio that gives you the choice of AM, FM, wide FM, anywhere. You have a manual switch for that. Why? Because particularly in the, for example, in the low part of the spectrum, say it starts at 25 megahertz. In there's a mix of AM and FM signals actually. So you want to switch maybe from one to the other. For example, in the 10 meter band, there's FM repeaters on 29 megahertz. In the 25 megahertz range, there's some AM stuff, but you might want to listen to FM stuff. CB band, there's some FM in the CB band, especially in Europe, but most is in AM. So they give you the opportunity to have a manual switch in case you want to listen to a different mode in a specific area. But it's a scanner radio, so it receives VHF and UHF, all sorts of things that is available from, at the time when it was out, you could receive cell phone, analog cell phones, you could listen to the police, you could listen to pretty much anything. It was just amazing. Now there's less analog stuff, still a lot though. I'm actually in the middle of scanning the bands in search of analog signals. I found like 100 different channels with analog signals here around Montreal that I punched in all the frequencies slowly on my scanner. So it is, it's really it's capable of the FM radio band with the wide FM. So they put the wide FM probably for that, and they put the wide FM possibility also because when the Pro 2006 came out, remember, there were still analog TV signals. So you could listen to the analog audio of TV signals on wide FM. So it's all part of the frequency range that the radio can actually receive. This Valmet Gilberto is in the UK, in the United Kingdom. It's the Royal Air Force Valmet from the United Kingdom. Ron Deming, nice to have you here. Let me just go down. So, Rondemic for the Oregon coast got a surprise this morning. 13 UTC, 5 a.m. local, tuning around. Logged a BPM time signal from China on 5 megahertz. Wow, was overriding WWVH. That is cool. That is cool. Dave Todd's getting good reception at 160 meters. Quite a few strong QSOs. Cool. Is possible Eurostation low AM band 530 kilohertz? Dan, there's the AM band in Europe, but it's not 530 kilohertz exactly on the basic. Are you hearing something? Because be careful. There's a lot of 530, 540. There's a few ethnic stations. Some in French, one in I think it's Chinese, Mandarin, or something. There's a few things. Yarabamba, nice to have you here. It depends what you want. You know what? If you want to just do airband listening and have a dedicated receiver, buy yourself a cheap used scanner, and it works great. If you are looking for something more modern, you know, there's it's surprising, the XH Dita D808, the Radioar R108, these two radios have the airband, and they are decent performers on the airband. So you would have AM, FM, and shortwave and airband listening possibilities. On the SDR sides, you can use, you know, for airband listening, you can use an RTL SDR V3. That would work decently well for receiving airport, but that's a software-defined radio that you need to use a computer. Welcome back, Prasad. Cheeto Productions, nice to have you on board from Dallas, my friend. I own 2 radio scanner and 2 Sony radios for backup. I don't own a shortwave radio. Should I add one to my kit? I would definitely add a shortwave capable radio for a simple reason. It would, in case of something really major happening, it would actually give you the possibility of receiving international broadcasts, you know. Linux DOS agrees 100% about the reviews. Reviews about the Sangean AM FM receiver having a poor receiver. I know from owning one, that isn't true. 20 plus FM stations, internal antenna, and I'm in the sticks. And you know, the problem Linux DOS, somebody told me something this week that is interesting, because he saw my review of the Texan AN48X. And he says, I really hope that you continue testing these for a very simple reason. I've seen other test these antennas and test radios like you do. But he says, you have used so many antennas, so many radios, that you exactly know what to look for. And you exactly know when a radio isn't performing as well as it should. Because you had so many, you know what's good and what's not. And he says a lot of the reviewers don't have that knowledge and will think that something might be really good or really bad. And in reality, it's actually really, you know, it's the other way around. So he says, you know, I really hope you continue doing that for time to come, because you are amazing in just putting down what's good and what's bad about everything that you try. Chuck Yunkin, nice to have you here. Yeah, if a state emergency happens, shortwave could be useful. Fast load 3807. Okay, yeah, I do have it here. Almost sounds like Stanag, actually. Let me just put the waterfall bigger here. It's definitely... Yeah, that's Stanag. DRM is much wider. And that looks like Stanag. Remember that in many parts of the world, the 80 meter band isn't ham radio above 3800 kilohertz. That looks like Stanag. Let me just check here. Do I hear anything? Or do I see anything? So this is 3805, roughly. 3805. Yeah, I don't have nothing there. But that sounds definitely like Stanag. 3805 kilohertz. Stanag. Huh. I don't find any quick info on it, but that's Stanag. It sounds like it from my ears. And like I said, remember that apart from North America, a big chunk of the 80 meter band is not amateur radio. It's utilities and broadcast band. Joey D, I made a random wire antenna today out of speaker wire using my Kato K1103. So far, so good. Low noise floor for now anyway. Cool. If you have low noise floor, that actually should work well. David Martin read the journal talking about data showing that a recent tsunami caused unique ripples below in the ionosphere. I wonder if the converse is possible too. You know, there's so much, honestly, there's so much, David Martin, that we don't know. I read so many articles about earthquakes creating all sorts of changes in the ionosphere. There's this ham radio guy in California, I believe, that has a 24-hour monitoring of the ionosphere. And he often posts, when there's all sorts of problem, all sorts of of weird things happening. If propagation degrades, if there's solar storms, he often posts images of how it faded. And last year or 2 years ago, I saw the guy post a video explaining that while there was a big earthquake, he saw the ionosphere actually react to the earthquake on that receiver that he has. So, I'm open to the idea. It's totally possible. I mean, come on. Earthquakes generate so much energy and tsunami and everything. Anything is possible. I'm open to the idea. I think, yes, there must be some interactions that are totally possible. For the first radio, if you've got the money, get yourself... I would get myself at least an SSB receiver. So that you have the possibility to listen to all the different signals around there, including amateur radio operators. Get yourself an XH Data D808. XH Data D808. I'm going to put it in the chat room here. You're going to have a great radio in case of emergency. And it's going to be a really, really nice add to your radios. Jane Dagger, Cuban Jammer story was cool. Gustavo Pinto says, thanks, Jill, for the comment and clarification on localization environment issues. Only time I've ever owned anything close to a Radio Shack scanner was a Whistler TRX-1. So that's more advanced, you know, with digital modes and stuff. Tony Turtle is on 3810 lower sideband. Yeah, it's I've got AMs on 3810 here. Real Balto says, nice scanner. Select on simulcast ever since. Brent, Jill, have you ever heard the Solomon Islands on shortwave? Way back in the 80s. I remember hearing them on, I believe it was 5020. Long time ago. There's many Pacific Islands that I heard only in the 80s, early 90s, roughly. How many Sam had the little brother, the 2001? Yeah, it was still a good radio. It's the 2000 series is pretty good. 2001, 2006. 2006 was mostly the hyperscan and the increased coverage to 1.3 gigahertz. Mark Stevens, Realistic Pro 106 handheld scanner works very well in my area. Same as GRE Whistler. Linus Doss says, I used to talk to a guy in Maine. He was an electronics engineer. I think he worked for New England Electronics. Sometimes he modified 2006, adding modifications via add-on boards. Yeah, there was quite a lot of mods for the 2006 over the year, including that S-meter mod and stuff like that. There's so many things. So many things. What else do we have? So Cheeto Productions just got a new Uniden SR30C handheld. Cool. Hey, William Helms, nice to have you here in from Florida. Ron Demings has got a Pro 2960 channel handheld, UHF, VHF. Many good times when traveling. I would always bring my radios, my scanners with me for sure. I missed the military base at Plattsburgh, New York. He was the only signals of military signals that I would hear on my scanner. That's actually why I had purchased a Pro 43. Ryan's has been receiving Voice of Korea past couple of days pretty well on 6170. Wow. Cool. Dave Todd says, last night could null SCFRB here, 1010 WINS New York clearly with the MLA30. Cool. That's good. Braden X. Wallen, nice to have you here from St. John's, Newfoundland, Canada. Gilberto A. Rivera, what are you using for shortwave antenna? Are you sticking with just the MLA30 or do you use anything else? MLA30. I do use the W6LVP, although it's not as good in some frequency ranges. But it's, you know, I got two loops that perform quite well. So what I do is the MLA30 I keep on the RSPDX. The W6LVP I will use on my portable radios or on any radio I need an antenna on. I still have the sloper in the back that's unplugged right now. That might be a good experiment, by the way. Putting back the sloper and testing out MLA30 versus sloper on the RSPDX, which is easy to switch the antenna in software. Robert Shine, nice to have you here in 3VXT, Pittsburgh. XH Data, any thoughts? XH Data 108? Do you mean the Arati R108? I'm trying to see here. I'm going to check out quickly what you might be talking about. XH Data 108. XH Data. Yeah, Because I think you're talking about the Radioar R108, which is also made by the same company. It's like the XH Data stuff. But if you're talking about the R108, pretty good. Pretty good. I got one here. Right here. If that's what you're talking about, this is exactly what you mean. The Radioar R108. Right here. Da-da-da-da. It's a very good performer on shortwave, medium wave. It has the airband. It is really nice radio. Full coverage, general coverage, from 150 kilohertz long wave to 30 megahertz, with no gaps. Has several bandwidths. It's actually very, very nice. Only thing it doesn't have compared to the XH Data is single sideband. But it's a very, very nice receiver, honestly. Really love the Radioar R108. Dave Freeman, I wanted to know what you think of the Sangean ATS 803A. As I ordered this radio, seems good. I had it before, wanted to get it again. So, Sangean ATS 803. Let me just refresh my memory on it. Make sure that ATS 803A. So, okay. That is also known as the Radio Shack DX440. Yeah, that's it. That's what I was thinking about. So, Sangean ATS 803A is the same as the Radio Shack DX440. I mean, they're decent portables from the past. I would say on the maybe on the if I had to rant a little on, is that they're good and nice receivers. They work well for what they are, but modern receivers today tend to be better at doing the same job. A lot of the portable radios today actually beat them. But that said, they are good radios. You're going to receive signals. You're going to have fun with it. And they're nice big radios also, which makes it's a lot of fun. If you like a big radio, you're going to have a lot of fun. It is a good radio. RDC 98 TDI. Well, you know, Brother Stare takes the airwaves, but you know what? You just move on and listen to something else. That's all. Mad Reader DXer, nice to have you here. And check 3805 on U20. It's Stanag, yeah. Pretty sure it's Stanag. RJDA Dakota, nice to have you here. Can get 133.15 Kansas City on XH Data D808, but I'm in Winsville, Missouri. What's the deal here? I'd rather listen to the airband on the 808, checking in. Haven't had much time to watch. You know, depending on propagation and stuff, you might get a lot of stuff. Depends. And it's probably your... You know, the area you are, the strength of the signals, there's so many things happening. David Martin. Digital mode used by Mars amateur operators, shared by the military. Supposed to be similar to Stanag. Possible. Yeah, it could be an image, absolutely. By the way, for that station you're receiving. What else do we have? Take care, Jane Dagger. It's nice to have you on board. What else do we have? Rufus Newt. Yeah, the one that did alter the Hertz axis slightly is the 2004 Indian Ocean, Indonesia major earthquake and tsunami. Yeah. Like anybody that says they have low noise where they live with a long wire antenna on their radios are very lucky, like Linux DOS says. RJDA Dakota used to get Tahiti on 15170. I used to get it almost every night in the 80s. I would also get it early morning on 7170, I believe was the frequency. Rifleman 336, the 2006 used to have optoelectronics board for computer control. Yeah, that was a big deal back then, absolutely. Radio Week signal work. Yeah, Build Cheek Scanner Handbook. I had those. Oh, man, those were so good. I remember having that book and just going through the mods of the different radios. Oh, man. Rufus Newt uses his wire and MLA30 in tandem. Switch to whatever works best. Cool. RSDC 98 TDI drinking some Willet Bourbon on the rocks. Cool. Yeah, the Digitech thing, William Helms. Absolutely. I've seen that Digitech radio. Looks like an XH data. Mark Stevens, 73, good night. Yeah, Tahiti was an easy catch almost every day. Gilberto Riviera, wish I had room for slopers or long wires, if anything, to make a compare. Since I live in an apartment, is loops for me now. Using a Walbrook for now with the Elenco DXR8T. Yeah, I'm lucky here because, I mean, I'm in an apartment, but the backyard I can easily put out antennas without any problems. Matter the Extra's got an ATS-03 and is a good radio that receives well. Problem is that with age, the tuning is all over the place and sound can have static. I would say it is better to get a new radio like the D808. Robert Shine, yes, they are listing XH Data D36, D108, and D328. That's interesting. Let me just check it out here. D108. I just want to... Actually, because the D328 I know. XH Data D108. D108. When I try D108, it only brings me D808. And the 108 seems to be... just brings me to the Radiwar R108. So it's probably the R108. The 108 must be what I just showed you, which is a different radio than the XH Data D808. I'm just going to check it out here. So D108. I'm going to go on eBay. And let's try XH Data D108. Da-da-da-dum. Let me see that. So D808, D328, 808, 808, 328. Yeah, the only 108 that comes up is the one that is the Radiwell. Because there's D38, D328, and there's D808. The 108 only brings up for me Radiwell. So I guess it's a Radiwell. I would guess. John Durham, nice to have you here from New Zealand. Nice and warm temp, high 20s. Here's the RSP2 Pro with eavesdropper trap dipole and MLA30. Cool. Here it's minus 12 Celsius. Give you an idea. So I'm gonna post my little stuff that I post regularly for anybody that wants to help me out. Remember that I'm here all the time. If you want to donate a little something, paypal.me/shortwave. or PayPal. Donations can be sent to the Yahoo email that I'm posting right now. You can become a patron at patreon.com/radio and computers. And that, of course, is where you can set up a little something every month. Remember, I'm here regularly, all the time, twice a week. I do radio reviews. A lot of the stuff that I do, I actually pay for. A lot of course, I've got some gifts, but most of the, like the famous Reticus TR608 crap radio, I actually purchased out of my own money and partly from the donations. So, if you like what I do, if you like to see more radios reviewed, more antennas, you can give me a little something. It really, really helps a lot and is something that is great to also pay for the fees of everything that it cost me to actually make what I do here. Yes, I do have YouTube monetization, but, there's lighting systems and cameras and bought a new computer, and you got to change stuff from time to time. Costs a lot of money. So remember that your donations are really welcome to help out. Remember, Facebook group. Official SWL channel on the Facebook group. It's a great place to be. When the show ends here, the Facebook group is where you need to go. Is the place where you need to head on to, post radio videos, post whatever you're listening to, ask questions, show us what you have. It's really a complement or an extension of this, because what happens is that you actually have this show, you have the live show, the chat room, and then when all of this ends, well, you end up with nothing except waiting for the next show. Well, the Facebook group means you can actually continue chatting, interacting with others. It's a great place to be. Don't forget that you need to answer the questions, but it's kind of cool to have everybody there. Lots of stuff happening, honestly. Really a lot of stuff there. So it's really cool to see everybody interacting, and it's a great group. So do take the time to ask to join. And so here it goes. There's a few people here. And other people here. And look at that. We are now in the Facebook group. Officially 425 members. I just added 3 members. So hope that you enjoy the place. René Paquin is asking how to access the chat room from the CIDX board. It's really, you need a Gmail account. You need to be logged into a Gmail account to access the chat room here in the show. Depends also. I know that some of you, depending on the devices, you actually the devices that you are using, some devices don't actually work well with the chat room. So it's sometimes a little difficult. So, of course, my name is Gilles. I'm located in Montreal, Quebec, Canada, and hope you're enjoying the show. Rufus Newt, Facebook page is great, no crap, and I learn something every day. Cool. Stephen Young, nice to have you here from the UK, my friend. Pretty cool. Brent says, nice recommendation. Facebook page is great for sure. So really cool. Okay, so we have our friend. I'm going to stop the chat where I am now because I'm the bottom of the chat anyways. And we got some questions coming in from Patrick that is in Hartford, Connecticut. And he's actually just written to me again now. He says, yeah, he senses that I'm actually ready for his questions. And he says he's enjoying the show tonight and is learning a lot. He actually has a Pro 2006 that he purchased a long time ago in a box, and he hasn't turned it on in years. So he says that it actually gave him the idea of getting the box and turning the radio back on. And he says that he learned things that he didn't know, including the AM, FM, and white FM information that I gave out. So, yes, so Patrick is still listening, and that's cool. Or still watching. So Patrick has a few questions. One of them, first of all, Patrick has one. First question he came up to is, why do we have single sideband on shortwave? So single sideband is there because it's a very efficient mode. Single sideband takes less energy because in a traditional transmission, so when you listen to a signal from an international broadcaster, what you'll have is a carrier with the information in it. But when there's no information, you still have that carrier there. That is a lot of energy wasted just maintaining a signal. So single sideband is a different mode. It is, you remove the carrier. So instead of having the carrier, there's no more carrier. The only information that comes out is whatever you will actually add to it. So your voice, music. So that carrier gone, first of all, it takes a lot less energy to transmit. Also, single sideband is smaller in bandwidth. So you can have more single sideband signals than typical AM signals. And you can have a lot more information also, because that joins your second question that you ask is, why is there upper and lower sideband? Well, you could, with upper lower sideband, technically have two stations on the same frequency and not even know about it. And this happens actually in where it's really, really easy to see is in the pirate bands. Sometimes you'll hear a pirate say 6925 upper sideband, and then you put yourself lower sideband and you hear one of those, fishermen, those peskies down in the Caribbean or whatever, and they're talking in lower sideband. And you notice that you didn't switch frequency. What you did is switch from what direction you're actually listening to on that frequency, up from that frequency or below that frequency. So you could technically have more transmissions if you want. The other thing also about single sideband that is appealing is that when you talk, you broadcast. When you put music, you broadcast. But when you don't talk or there's no music, you're not wasting any energy. It's not like an AM mode signal where that carrier is still there. It's still taking a lot of energy to just have that carrier there. So it's a more efficient way of transmitting. And last but not least, single sideband and interference and noise will often be easier to understand with the information in it than an AM signal. It's more difficult to listen to an AM signal when the conditions are difficult than to actually hear what's being said in a single sideband conversation at the same time. So that's for the first two questions, actually. Radio Weak Signal Works says, what is the best email address for me? For contacting me for something radio related, official, I'm just going to put it here, official shortwave radio at gmail.com. So official shortwave radio at gmail.com. Let me just make sure that it's all right. I said Shortwave. Official Shortwave Radio at gmail.com. So this is the email where anything radio related is the best place to send Jeff. KD5 QDL from Gross, Texas. Nice to have you here. And Radio Week Signal works, so the email address is the best. That's the best email for me for anything. Andy Coley, nice to have you here, my friends. Linux DOS, I built a data slicer for one of my Pro 2006. Had a lot of fun decoding stuff like data, pagers, and other stuff. Wow, cool. Cool. Radio Week Signal Works has got 2006. Just replaced the backlights on the radios. Look like new now. Yeah, that was the biggest flaw of these receivers. They had an electroluminescent display that wore off over time. Mine is actually now very, very dark. I need to, what I wanted to do at some point is like add some LED lighting instead. Gilberto Rivera says, greatly enjoyed the show. Happened to be off from work today. Hopefully we'll tune on Friday. Thanks for those I interacted with. Take care, Gilberto. And remember, we are live twice a week, by the way. On Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern, at 4 p.m. Pacific, 0 UTC. And Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern, at noon Pacific, at 20 UTC. Hope you enjoy our shows every week. Bobby Burgess, if you're using an SDR on a Mac or Linux computer, GQRX, after a 20-month wait, has finally an update with bug fixes, features, and improvements. So if you're on a Mac or a Linux machine, check that out. Check that out. Casper Peterson, the name of the Facebook group is Official SWL Channel. I'll post the link here again for the Facebook group. So you just click the link. Official SWL Channel is the name of the Facebook group. For those that missed. Linux DOS, shall you explain and give a good tip? A couple of live episodes ago, one can crack down on AM stations via one sideband. Yeah, because what's interesting on that is the when you listen to an AM station, an AM signal. So say you have a bunch of very, very tightly spaced shortwave stations on the 49 meter band. And you have interference. And I'll give an example of last night. Last night, I wanted to listen to the BBC at 05 UT. The best signal at 05 UT BBC for here in Montreal is 6005 kilohertz. There's a big problem with 6005. It's stuck right next to Radio Havana Cuba 6000. And Radio Havana Cuba and 6000 actually emits a lot of spurs that are a little too large. So what do I do to get better reception of 6005? Well, I'll use upper sideband. Now, why upper sideband instead of lower? Because you want to move away from the signal that's interfering. So if you're on 6005 and you are using upper sideband, you're actually listening to the upper frequency range, 6006, 6007, which is away from that 6000 kilohertz signal that's interfering. So that's why you'll use the sideband that is the opposite of the interfering signal. If I would listen to a signal on 7500 and there's an interfering signal on 7505, then I would use lower sideband on 7500 to move away from 7505, go down. And also using single sideband is a great way of hearing very weak stations. So when you tune in AM mode, most of the time, if it's a little noisy and the signals are weak, you can easily move over a station and not even know it was there. And if you use single sideband, you'll hear that little tone as you move through the frequency. And that'll tell you, oh, there's a station here on that frequency. It's also how we often kind of pin down the exact frequency of a station. So you might have seen something like, oh, look at that, there's a station on, 6435.3. How do you know it's .3? Well, using single sideband, once again, you will be able to zero in on the voice and know that, okay, I'm hearing the voice correctly here. That means this is where the frequency, that's the frequency where it's transmitting. So that's how often I will say, oh, there's a power station on 6954.8. I'll zero in on with single sideband until I hear the music or the voice sounds natural. Gives you an idea. But for that, you need a high quality receiver that is good enough that you know that the frequency calibration is pretty accurate. Rufus Newt, I knew I would learn something tonight. So let me just check here. See who has applied for the group. And Casper Peterson. I'll add you because I know it's you, and I'll add the two others. Here we go. So everybody's in. So have fun in the group. Post whatever you're listening to. It's also fun because you have a lot of people that will, share what they're listening to. You can try it on your own radio. So 427 members right now. And so welcome everybody. Keep it clean. It's a great place to be. So, another question from Patrick. He actually tunes in CHU time signal from Ottawa on 3330 and 7850. But question he has is, why is it that if I listen at the same time every day, some days one frequency will be there, the next it will not, and some days both are together. Some days one is stronger than the day before. I don't fully understand why, if I listen at the same time of day every day, that the same frequency isn't the same strength. So basically it is and has to do with how propagation works on shortwave. On shortwave, signals bounce off the ionosphere about 100 miles above your head. The ionosphere is not a layer that is always on the same strength. It's a layer that is always reorganizing itself. Ever wonder why a signal fades down and up all the time? It's because the ionosphere is always in reorganization. So that it's like a live thing. It's like a beast. And basically every day it's not the same because it's impacted by many other things. The ionosphere can be stronger or weaker due to solar activity. So the sun has a few sunspots. There's more energy come from the sun. The ionosphere is stronger, more dense. It changes its properties. There could be geomagnetic storming. That also changes the properties of the ionosphere. It can actually degrade it. The other thing that can happen also is as the year goes by, there's a change in the seasons. And that change in the seasons actually impacts the propagation of the signals of the ionosphere, because the ionosphere is not ionized the same in winter, in summer, in the spring. There's so many things that impact the ionosphere that from day to day, it's never the same. So you cannot expect to have day to day the same signal at the same time. I always say to people, shortwave is, today you're listening to that signal. Don't expect that it will be there tomorrow, because you might be having a very unique moment where that signal is coming in right now. That's a great example. RJDA Dakota says, the ionosphere is like an ocean. The ocean. It's rolling, flowing, always changes. Absolutely. It is totally, that's a really, really good example of what you might want to visualize the ionosphere as a constantly changing, like the ocean. Basically, yes, absolutely. It's amazingly good to compare it like that. It's really like the ocean. Another question coming out of Patrick has to do with how did they choose the international broadcast bands? And there's a related question to that. Why are there international broadcast bands that I hear nothing, and others that have a lot of stations on them? Wouldn't it be better if they'd be spread out so that they don't interfere with each other? So that is an interesting question and has multiple, so there's multiple things to talk about. So how did the international broadcast bands actually happen or were decided? Well, look, there's something called the ITU, which is the International Telecommunications Union. And there's a lot of the governments basically came together to an agreement of, okay, we're going to split the frequency ranges in a certain way. And at some point in time, they simply thought, well, oh, wow, shortwave could be so good to broadcast, propaganda or whatever from my country to the world. And so they all came into an agreement. Okay, let's divide the bands on a certain number of shortwave bands for international broadcast purposes. I don't know exactly when that happened. It could be interesting for me to kind of research this and know a little more. But somewhere in the 1900s, they decided upon how the bands would be divided for different purpose. Now, you've got several international broadcast bands. Some are what we call tropical bands that cannot be used anywhere. So an example, 120 meters, that's in the 2 megahertz range, 90 meters, 3 megahertz range, 60 meters, 4 megahertz range. Those three bands are what we call tropical. You cannot broadcast if you're not within a certain distance of the equator. So, for example, from here in Montreal, if I wanted to broadcast, I would not be allowed in the tropical bands because I'm too far from the equator. I'm out of the boundaries of where they accept transmissions should come from. Then there's the other international broadcast bands. The reason why some are more crowded than others has to do with, for the same reason that we just talked about, the fact that the ionosphere changes. Solar activity and all of that impacts what frequencies we can use. We have something called the maximum usable frequency. The maximum usable frequency is the highest frequency you can use before your signal will go into space rather than bounce off the ionosphere. And this has a lot to do with solar activity, day or night patterns, and so on. And we are in the low part of the solar cycle right now. So that tends to lower the maximum usable frequency. That means many higher frequency ranges of international broadcast bands are incapable of shortwave propagation. So you hear nothing or very little. And that's why everybody crowds at the same place, because that's the best band for broadcasting. So that's basically what happens with these bands. There are bands that are unused now, like the 11 meter band, which is 25 megahertz. That band, nobody uses it anymore for broadcast. Last time I heard a station there, boy, it's long time ago. I actually have a QSL card here from Radio RSA, Radio South Africa, 25790. I remember hearing Radio France International on 25820, I think was the frequency. Man, I heard Deutsche Welle there. There were stations, but back then, solar activity was really high. So, and there are some other bands that actually have, like 13 meter band is used, 21,500 to 22,000 kilohertz. But it is used for certain areas, and because of the low solar activity, it's not always easy to hear a station from there. But that's pretty much resumes all of that and what's happening. So, what else do we have? Hey, Gustavo Pinto, take care, my friends. Robert Shine found a Facebook group. Cool. It's nice to have everybody there for sure. RJDA Dakota, why is there North American stations on the 90 meter band, 3215? Because they are within that boundary. They're at the limit. So, I don't remember what's the rule for transmitting on the tropical bands, but it's like anything that is up to a certain number of degrees above or below the equator. And so, some of the stations from North America on the 90 meter band, except, okay, there's an exception to the rule, and we're gonna talk about that. Some of them are still within the boundary. Now, there are some that are not, and that you're right, because I just thought of one. WBCQ, Monticello, Maine. So here's the thing, and this will also impact other broadcast bands. Technically, 90 meters, 120, and 60 are tropical bands. You need to be within the boundary of a certain number of degrees above or below the equator. But there are stations that just don't care. And like there are stations that don't follow the rules. So, the international broadcast bands we were talking, they have a certain bandwidth. You need to broadcast within this and this frequency. That's where you should be. How many stations are outside? I mean, look at WRMI 7780. That's not inside the international broadcast band at all. The 41 meter international broadcast band hands at 7,500, 7,600, something like that. They're outside. So the same thing, my JDA Dakota, is WBCQ. 3165, what's the frequency to use? 3265 that we're using. 5130. Even WWCR, I'm not sure, is in the... I'd like to know if WWCR Nashville is actually within the boundary. I know a station in Florida would be within the boundary. But some stations just don't care. And they use whatever band they want to be on, and they just broadcast. And that, it's that. It's like the ones that are out of band, like WRMI and 7780. It's a place they shouldn't be. But they are there. They decided they're there, and that's it. So that's mainly the reason why. They just don't care. They just don't care, honestly. Michael Mora, nice to have you here from Colorado Springs, Colorado. Robert Shine, 11 meters citizen band. Yeah, that's, actually, so you're talking, Robert, of the CB band that we also call 11 meters, which is 20, the official North American CB band is 26965 to 27405. But there's something called the 11 meter international broadcast bands. And these are, they were from like 25,700 to 26,100. And many of the, by the way, if you buy a cheap shortwave portable that is only does only the international broadcast bands, you might notice that it does go up to 25 megahertz. It's because they include and still include the old 11 meter international broadcast band that is not used anymore. But 11 meters is also what the name they gave to the international broadcast band, which was between 25,700 and 26,100, which is a full megahertz below the CB band that often we call 11 meters also. William Helms, proximity to equator broadcast frequency. I never knew that. Killer FCC ham ticket question. Yeah, there is. That's why they call it the tropical band. The rules of the tropical band are that you are not supposed to broadcast if you are further away from a certain number of degrees. That's why they called themselves the tropical bands at some point, because the stations broadcast there. That's why there were so many stations from Central, South America, and Africa, because all the stations all the countries over there are all within the boundaries of that range. So they were all broadcasting and following the rules, broadcasting within the tropical bands. So, Jim Ricky, nice to have you here, my friend. Michael Moran, 12 meters. 12 meters is there's a 12 meter band for amateur radio, which is 24,890 to 24,990, just below 25 megahertz. It's a very small 100 kilohertz 12 meter band for amateur radio. Keegan has WTWW strong at 5085. Pretty cool. Yeah, there are frequencies that sometimes jump over. And so it brings to another question that's kind of interesting here. So another question that Patrick has is, how come I can't listen to or can't hear WBCQ most of the time? And one day I'll tune it super strong, but most of the time, all frequencies, I can't hear anything. They aren't that far away. It's the same reason I have a hard time getting WBCQ here in Montreal. WBCQ in Monticello, Maine is close enough to Montreal that when they broadcast, most of the station signal jumps over us. So we're in that skip zone where we don't hear anything. One of the biggest problems and what people have a hard time sometimes understanding is when you listen to a station on medium wave, like an AM radio or on FM, they are broadcasting a ground wave. It's meant to be heard around the area where they broadcast. WBCQ does not broadcast to the area surrounding it. It's broadcasting to the world. So it's giving an angle as its signal. And that means there's very little ground wave on it. And the signal, most of the time, will jump and be over you. So WBCQ signals are there. They're above your head somewhere. You're not getting that ground wave or anything. When you do, it's because the ionosphere is in a very unique state. And that a very shallow angle or a very, something's happening that the bounce isn't the same as usual. and you're within the listening area for that day or that night or that moment. That moment can be very short. Could be a 10-minute moment. Could be a full evening. Then the next day, well, it's gone. It's not there anymore. So here, when they broadcast like 9330 here, I hear because it's 500 kilowatts and usually has some form of signal still bouncing here. But most of the, like 7490 is often impossible to hear. 5130 is also very difficult here. And it depends also on the season, because it depends on the, once again, how strong the ionosphere is for supporting the broadcast. Good night, Mad Radio DXer. Nice to have you here. David Martin from an amateur extra exam pool question. What is trans-equatorial propagation? It's propagation between two mid-latitude points at approximately the same distance, north and south of the equator, magnetic equator. Rick Satter, nice to have you here, my friend. I have a scanner that does, I've got the ICOM ICR30 that does some form of digital modes, but here the police is encrypted, impossible to listen to. Yeah, there's RJDA Dakota says used to get all kinds of Colombian and Venezuelans on 60. Absolutely. There were tons. I remember radio. There was, what was there? So 4990 was Radio Barquisimeto. I had QSL of them. 4980 was Ecos del Torbes. That one was a very strong one on 4980 from Venezuela. Remember Radio Reloj on Reloj on 4832 with got a QSL here with a clock on it. There were so many signals. I remember listening to IET on 4930 4VEH. Oh man. Linux DOS. Yeah, there's a kind of a CB band on the UHF range, the FRS, the Family Radio Service. Absolutely. Absolutely. Michael Moore, I used to have a ICOM or Yaesu chart that had all the AM bands, but I don't remember where I put it. Duh. Yeah, well, you there's look online. There's a lot of updated, because there are some changes to the ham band, especially the allocations within the bands because of all the new modes, and you can easily get charts. I've printed a few here. I don't know where they are because I would show you, but there's quite a few that you can get. I actually posted a video, a couple of videos, a couple of weeks back on the channel that gives you a couple of charts that you can actually print out if you want, and they are updated. Sheldon Harvey, nice to have you on board from Greenfield Park, Quebec. Pretty cool to have everybody here. And Stephen Yank says, short hop, long hop when you hear the echo from the road on the other side of the world. Yeah, absolutely. Jeff King, you talked about all the South Central American stations. Yes. I guess you got a question, maybe. We'll check it out. Robert Shine, we got those new bands too, Joel, 630 meters, I think. I may be incorrect. And I think 2200. Yeah, there's 630 and 2200. But there's also the because there's also the different allocations, because different modes that exist, like, you know, today we have FT8, FT4, all sorts of things like that didn't exist like 10 years ago. And so the charts online that I post the videos are updated regularly with all the little chunks of space where everything should technically be or not. Kind of interesting. Yeah, these really, really, really low frequencies are really, really tough to get. Shane Green, nice to have you here, says, I'm learning a lot. Keep talking. Oh, man. So you're watching the Shortwave show. And does rebanding affect shortwave? Do you mean by rebanding the all the different frequency ranges that they are actually kind of changing their allocations to? On shortwave itself, there's really not a lot of change in allocations, honestly. Shane Green, KJ7IIN in Utah. Nice to have you here. My name is Joel. I'm located in Montreal, Quebec, Canada. So there's not a lot of on shortwave below 30 megahertz. They're not really touching the allocations. Nothing is really being changed in frequency allocations. Not that I know of, at least. But it's not. They're rebranding mostly the VHF UHF range, where some of the spectrum are removed, like analog TV frequencies are changed to be used for other things. But below 30 megahertz, there's not a lot of stuff happening with that. So, RDC, lay off the cranberry vodka. Jeff King says, I had a QSL letter. Revolutionary greetings to you from the voice of Nicaragua. Homeland or dead, we will win. Oh, yeah, that was... what was the name of that station? The name was Radio Venceremos, which I believe means we will win. I remember talking to... You're reminding me of a little story. When one of my first jobs I had, I was working with a guy that was from El Salvador. And I was talking to him about stations in the area, and I was talking to him about a station called Radio Venceremos. And he says, Venceremos means we will win. And so, kind of fits in what you're saying here. Ali Demirci, nice to have you here, my friend. Yeah, Jim, 5G allocations all over the place. Starting at the lowest 5G that I've seen was there's testing of 5G at like 600 megahertz. I know they want to allocate a chunk for 3.5 gigahertz, another chunk at 6 gigahertz, and some 5G chunks at very, very high frequencies. And it's kind of scaring the hell out of everybody. So I don't know. Steven, take care, my friend. Forgot to go to bed. That's because of the live show. So they're really using a lot of spectrum that they're trying out. The big problem, and that's the what's scaring everybody, and that will be the big problem for 5G, by the way, is that the higher in frequency you go, the less range you have. And they're saying that if they start using like 6 or even 10 gigahertz, and I've seen some proposition of as high as 15 gigahertz range and frequencies, they will have to multiply the amount of antennas and cell towers by a huge amount. Antennas are going to be everywhere. And you know what? I am wary of a possible effect of radio frequencies on the human body and our health. And even though right now what we have in the frequency ranges for the regular cell phone coverage, there doesn't seem to be, at least for now, any effect, noticeable effect. I still would not want to live. When I was a tech guy, there was a woman that I would go fix her computer. She lived in a building that was, 25, 30 stories high. She would live like almost at the top. Every time I would go there, I noticed that there were antennas. There were, cell antennas at the top of her building. I'm telling you, I would not like to live there. Tell me what you want. Tell me that it shouldn't impact your life or health. I'm not one of those that would like to live there. I can tell you that. And I'm not super happy with the fact that they would multiply by a huge amount the number of antennas just to have coverage. Because of the higher frequencies, they'd have to put more antennas. I don't know, but until now, I was not too concerned with cell phone and the radio frequencies there. 5G for me is more of a concern. I'm thinking about, really kind of a problem here. Prasad, thanks, Joe, for this informative, educative show. Thanks for all those that have interacted and asked questions, especially Patrick today. I have to move away to attend some urgent work. Take care, Prasad. Always nice to have you on board from India. Pretty cool. RJDA, Dakota, rebanding is mostly on the digital TV ranges. I've heard that some of the medium wave stations are trying to full digital. Yeah, but they're kind of not rebanding. They're just trying to use or change the modes, because now the FCC wants and is trying to see if the AM band, the medium wave band stations can move to digital, which I don't really know. Not sure it's a good idea. David Martin got his general last year, amateur extra a month later. All questions are available for review online, and the ARL Q&A, absolutely. Anybody who wants to become a ham, you can check it out. Michael Mora, how's my testing of the ICOM cell phone? It does look like an old... Everybody tells me, what's that, an old Nokia phone? No, it's an ICOM ICR30. I'm using it every day. I'm still learning its little quirks and quarks. Right now, I noticed that to have the best performance, I put the attenuator at 2, level 2 out of 3. That gives me the best signals because it overloads everywhere if I don't do that. My review is very, very soon coming up. On shortwave and medium wave, it's not that bad. It's better than ER20. And in big part due to the fact that it has a narrower bandwidth that you can select. The R20 does not. On VHF, UHF, right now it's okay, but it's kind of a mess. The overload is a problem, and I'm having difficulty just decoding D-Star, which is not normal. And I don't know. It's coming up. Rufus Newt, I agree with high frequency radio waves causes problems. Linux DOS, you ever pull the ferrite antenna out of a portable and replace with another better one? I've been thinking about trying it. I've never, but you got to be careful with that because in most medium wave radios, the ferrite and the number of turns of the coil are closely related to the frequency range that you're listening to. So if you change it with one that has more turns or is longer, you might see that the radio has a shift in the frequency that you're listening. So something you're listening on 580 might now be on 750 or whatever. That's one thing you got to be careful. It depends on the design of the radio, but it's something to think about. Michael Mora, did Paul take over my chair today? No, he did not. He doesn't want to use the chairs here anymore. Brent, Joe, do you think banning 5G is warranted as some countries are doing? I do not think banning is the solution. I think more testing is the solution. We need to know more about the effects of all of this. You know, the biggest problem and the reason why 5G is happening is very simple. With the extra push in speed that we want to have on our devices, well, the frequencies we're using right now are not capable of that because the bandwidth is not big enough for all of the data we want. And we want to have low latency and really fast connections. So you gotta choose different bandwidths. You gotta choose different ways of doing the same thing for the technologies ahead. But remember that the higher frequency you go, the higher in frequency you go, the more energy you're pumping out in that radio wave. So 15 gigahertz signal has a lot more punch in it than a 1 gigahertz signal. Plus, you'll need a lot more antennas to cover the same area in a city than 15 gigahertz that you are in 1 gigahertz. Because the signals are stopped by almost everything. At 15 gigahertz, a sheet of paper will block the signal. Simple sheet of paper. So the increase in the number of transmitters everywhere, that's what's scaring me, honestly. I'm going to tell you that. Yeah, the digital stuff in North America and the US especially, RJDA Dakota, is I think what could kill medium wave, honestly. Robert Shine, correctly, I'm not sure, have no clue how to pronounce your name. Yeah, Gilles. So it's spelled correctly, and you just pronounce it Gilles. You recommend a shortwave with Bluetooth? I want it for listening before bed. I know that like there's Keegan in the chat room that has the Ethon receiver with Bluetooth and stuff. It's part of the technologies, but remember what you could do. Honestly, if you are looking for a way to listen to the radio, I don't know exactly why you want a Bluetooth. Maybe because you want a Bluetooth headset with it or something. There are other ways also to transform a regular radio and use it also. There's dongles, there's little things that you can buy that you can plug in the earphone jack that will actually have you listen through Bluetooth and stuff like that. There's so many things that you could do. The problem is mostly not the Bluetooth part, is the fact that as long as the radio that is, the shortwave radio with Bluetooth is capable. If you're talking about adding Bluetooth to a radio or shortwave radio for listening, Bluetooth is in 2.4 gigahertz range. It's so far from shortwave, it probably won't interfere with it much. Linux DOS says, gotta admit that 5G is worrying me. Maybe the tinfoil hat will become a thing. Yeah, maybe we will need that tinfoil hat, and I'll be selling them for cheap right here on the channel. Professor, has anyone ever had the SAR on the cell phone? What distance it be kept from your head? Oh, the specific absorption rate. One thing that I learned, which is interesting, is the fact that my S9 Plus is on the list of the top 10 cell phones that actually emits more energy than is allowed by law. That and a couple of iPhones are on the list of this, when it's here, actually puts more energy to my head than is actually allowed by law. And, it makes you think. I never use my phone like this. I always use it if I have to use my phone, I use it in my hand like this. I put it on speakerphone. I never put it here, almost never. So, I don't know. It's... But how much talk did we have on cell phone over the years? Cell phones arrived in early 80s. Back then they were in low frequencies. They were 150 megahertz. But when they started moving up in frequency and used 900 and then 1.9 gigahertz and so on, and become popular, well, that's when a lot of tests and a lot of people started saying, "Hey, what are the effects on the body?" We know that there is an effect. We know that using a phone for a while like this, there is some in your skull and in your brain. There is slight a slight height of temperature. There is the radio waves actually do heat up very slightly your head. There is an interaction. We know. The only thing that we are looking at this is we know there's an interaction, a very slight one, but it cannot be linked to any disease or cancer or anything. And look, it's now we're starting to have a good run on the cell phones, honestly, and use of cell phones. Is there a higher rate of cancer, brain cancer, and stuff like that today than, we don't see any specifications or anything that seems to indicate that there's more cancer rates because of cell phones. But we're at a certain limit here and a certain level. What I'm talking about in 5G is that we're now going to increase frequencies, more energy, have a lot more antennas everywhere, more radio waves everywhere. We might be starting to see the first problems with 5G. Maybe 5G is when we're going to start seeing, oh, look at that. That city is 5G with different frequencies at the 10, 12 gigahertz range. Look at that. There's more cancers of whatever. We don't know. And there's not enough tests to really know, actually. And, you can't, like in everything in life, you cannot ask the companies behind the cell phones and the networks, is that safe? It's like, asking a liar, do you lie sometimes? No. Of course not. Same, you cannot, there's need to be really, really very, I think for 5G, there needs to be two things that need to be rethinked. The frequency ranges they're going to use, and there needs to be independent testing and really good testing with, animals and so on. Does it do anything, Danny Shortwave Radio DX from Yonkers, New York. Nice to have you here, my friend. William Helms, right? Realignment might be required when swapping ferrite loops on the medium wave radio. Yeah, that's what I think. Because it might change the frequency coverage. Rufus says, is bedtime radio is the Grunic G6. My bedtime radio is whatever I pick up from my office here before I go to bed. So it's never the same. Now, I got to admit that the XH Data D808 has been there for a little while, but, I'd say that my bedtime radio lately has been the ICOM ICR30. So I play around with it for like half an hour before going to bed. RDC98 TDI, nice to have you on board from Kentucky. No real questions, just killing time listening to my ICOM IC7410, watching the chat. Cool. Bro Weaver. Talking about 5G now. Where is the tinfoil Alex Jones hat? Oh, man. Danny Shortwave's bedtime radio, XH Data D808. Was disappointed when the Rowdy Wow R108, the battery swelled up and looked like it was to explode. Oh, really? Wow. Oh, you can, Danny Shortwave, you can order a, look. I'll show you what I got in my Radio. Where did I put my Radio? I put it here. If they don't have the Radio Hour battery, you can simply order a Nokia battery. So this is the Nokia battery. In my Radio Hour, I've got a spare, and it's a Nokia phone battery, actually. So I don't know if you can, here we go, the BL5C. This is what you need to order. Works great. So just order a Nokia phone battery. Those are not out of stock, and there's tons of them on eBay and everywhere. And that's what I have when I want to when the other battery's dead. I got to say the battery life on the RadioWow when you leave it off is a little is short, so that's why I got another one. So just get a Nokia battery. DD, nice to have you here. Some are believed to cause brain tumors. Yeah, I don't know. For sure, time will tell. That's for sure. RDC98 says still use an old Texan PL600 portable, but when not chewing the rag on 40 meters, 75% of it is listing on the 7410. So cool. Yeah, but there's no proof of that, Didi. There's really nothing. There's no. I mean, there are some big studies on cell phone usage done in multiple parts of the world right now, and none of them come to a conclusion that there's that we could see an effect. The next DOS says, okay, on the ferret antenna mods, thanks. Michael Mora found an app on Google Play that was for world radio, but still checking out. Seems like iHeart. Oh, it's possible. Yeah, iHeart is really a lot of stuff there. No problem, Danny Shortwave. Yeah, it's very common, like your Rufus says. It's one of the most common batteries for cell phones. So just order that. RJ DA Dakota says shortwave never works in my bedroom in the basement. Use a CC Wi-Fi, which gets all kinds of station. Yeah, unfortunately, there's a lot of spaces and a lot of places that we unfortunately cannot listen to shortwave, which is sad. You know, I've got a Sangean WFR20 internet radio here. I never use it. I need to take it out. It's full of junk over it right now. I mean, it's a $250 radio. I should take it out and tune. But for some reason, for me, it's not as cool to listen to that. The only times I used it actually was to listen to music because the sound quality is amazing. Jim says 910 radio Panasonic RF2200. Yeah. Yeah, for the other XH data, the 18650. They're sold at vape store because the vape they use the battery in that the vapes. Yep, absolutely. Dean Martin, are earbuds safer or do they just allow more direct brain access? Earbuds are safer from what I see. But I've seen some tests, David Martin, that seem to show that part of the RF of the phone actually goes through the wire in the earbuds. But definitely, for most tests that I've seen, they all say, you know what, if you have to use your phone all the time, use earbuds. Jeff King's got a RF2200, switch is bad, stuck into single sideband. Listen to ham radio operators. But earphones are better than using the cell phone itself. Absolutely. In most tests that I've seen, pretty much. Well, you know what? Fast load switch are easy fix, but it depends on who. And that is a problem. Easy fix is not for everyone. Some people do have an easy fix for that. For the majority of people, a switch change in a device is not an easy fix. And we always got to remember that. for a lot of people, it's not an easy fix. Take care, Brent. It's nice to have you on board. So, hey, guys, I'm going to leave you tonight. We've been on for 3 hours and 15 minutes. Hope you enjoyed the show. Thanks for everybody that donated during the show. It was much appreciated. Stay safe, my friend. The next show is Friday. And we will be on at 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific, at 20 hours Universal Time. It was an interesting show tonight. Lots of questions, a lot of interesting stuff to talk about. So really, really cool to have everybody here. So take care, my friends. See you Friday, 20 hours Universal Time. Love you all. And RDC says, really quick, do you ever talk much on the radio? Well, I'm not a ham radio operator, so I don't talk much on the radio. And my CBs are pretty much not being used much. So take care, everybody. Stay safe. And see you soon. See you Friday. And thanks, Gaetan, for the donation. I saw that arrive, by the way. Take care. Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern, 20 UTC. And, of course, 2 shows a week, Wednesday and Friday. Wednesday is at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific, 0 UTC. Don't forget the Facebook group. Lots of fun there, and it's nice to have everybody. And you can ask questions. Always somebody to answer. I post stuff all the time, so it's a great place to be. Bye-bye. Take care. See you Friday.